As a human anomaly after crossing over, he discovered that the world was more colorful than he had imagined. To have easier access to all of this, first have a special resume, then find the right place to fill out a form in a city shrouded in fog all year round, and finally, the most important step, kill a chicken or catch a mouse. Keywords of the novel. I am also an abnormal creature without pop-ups, I am also a complete download of the abnormal creature TXT, and I am also reading the latest chapter of the abnormal creature. Chapter 1. To kill a chicken first you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. To kill a chicken first, evergreen. You're not very qualified. In the lower urban area of the hazy city, at a banquet bar, the bartender looked at a resume in front of him and then at the young man in front of him, hesitating slightly. Not very good, but it meets the standards. This statement made the bartender's expression even more conflicted. Currently, it's not the bar hiring people, no, it can't be said that it's not hiring people. It's just that the people recruited are not employees, but people who go to do other big things. The resume placed in front of the bartender looks like a complete mixed-type resume. If there are any outstanding aspects, they are completely useless. However, if you insist that it is useless, it is not enough. Generally speaking, once you enter the industry, you cannot find any teammates, and even mixed people will not find mixed people. Mainly because I don't have enough time, otherwise my resume would be even more beautiful. Would you like a glass of wine? The bartender chuckled silently in his heart. He really didn't even bring a performance. Young people nowadays. Zheng Yichen nodded and said, then let's take the one with the lowest alcohol content. The bartender brought a glass of fruit wine to the young man in front of him and continued reading the remaining part of his resume. Since you have found this place, you also know that our place is only a proxy point. If the bar goes out, it has nothing to do with the banquet bar. Of course. Zheng Yichen tasted the fruit wine in front of him, and his eyes lit up. Although there was a faint alcoholic taste, the stronger one was the taste of fruit, which was better than some drinks. Seeing Zheng Yichen's reaction, the bartender took out a form and said, once you fill in this, that's all. However, I still need to remind you that adults are responsible for their choices. You can use this level of identity to show off to your classmates and relatives in the future, but with this level of identity, even if you actively stay away from some anomalies, those anomalies will still approach you when you're not paying attention. The young man in front of him may be young, but he is no longer a child. If he only thinks that the identity of a hunter is very handsome and wants to pursue such an identity, then only the person involved will regret it. Hunter is just a common term, including demon hunters and exterminators. After all, these types of people are usually paid to do things, and their scope is not much different from that of normal mercenaries. However, ordinary mercenaries cannot handle strong anomalies, but these types of people can. Demon hunters are not the kind of people who are often held accountable and will be stabbed to death by forks. I have an average relationship with my classmates and no relatives. Zheng Yichen quickly filled out the form in his hand. The bartender looked at Zheng Yichen with some sympathy in his eyes and said, that way, we should live a better life instead of actively contacting abnormalities. Zheng Yichen looked up and smiled at the bartender's advice, handing over the form in his hand. It was because I found myself more suitable for dealing with abnormalities that I took the initiative to contact, he said. The bartender put away the completed form and took out a camera to take a photo of Zheng Yichen. The background didn't need to be too strict, as the photo required a portrait of the young man in front of him. No matter how flashy the background was, the portrait was clear enough. Often, people would add a photo with a background of some kind of monster because they wanted to look cool. In the next week, you need to bring a proof, said the bartender, putting the form and the resume brought by Zheng Yichen together. He glanced at some of the experiences on the resume and spoke a bit more sarcastically, even if it's an alienated chicken. Do you still want that chicken to know how to play ball? Zheng Yichen nodded and drank the remaining fruit wine in one gulp. It was something he bought with money and should not be wasted. As for the bartender's joke, he had no idea of refuting it. He was well aware of how much moisture his resume contained. Leaving the noisy banquets and bars, the city at night is shrouded in mist. The name, Misty City, is derived from it. The situation in the upper city district is relatively good, while in the lower city district, the foggy phenomenon becomes even more severe at night. The street lights are dedicated fog lights, and even so, even at a long distance, the passers-by still see some elusive shadows. Returning home, Zheng Yichen took off his coat and went to the bathroom. He lifted his vest in front of the mirror, looked at the subtle marks on his chest, and nodded in satisfaction. There are abnormalities in this world, and he himself also has abnormalities. A strange disease called withering, which is not a normal case, has made it quite difficult for him to grow up again. If it weren't for being one of the many travelers, he would probably have cooled down from childhood. After crossing over, he couldn't figure out how to shrink. At that time, the most important thing he cared about was also a strange disease that had emerged on his body. Later, he realized that it was also an anomaly. The advantage of age also allows him to smoothly integrate into this world. In a modern society, a child, even if they cannot find their background, can still easily integrate into it. He can also make a living in a welfare home. He, who has long been an adult, will not develop new awkward personalities due to his own problems. He is still him, although it has not been easy. He eventually grew up smoothly in this world and left the welfare institution. The difficulty of growing up again as an adult is not high, and the high difficulty always lies in his abnormality. When he is young, it is not too serious. At most, the skin on his body has wrinkles. As he grows older, the problem becomes more and more serious. Even if he works hard to exercise, the effect is not very significant, but at least exercising is more effective than taking medicine. It's better to chew 2 more mantou than take medicine. This abnormality will not make Zheng Yichen feel weak, nor will it affect his efficiency in exercising. It will only cause more severe wrinkles on his skin. When touching those wrinkles, it is like touching dead tree bark. The wrinkles are initially only on his trunk, and wearing them tightly can cover them up. As the symptoms worsen, they gradually spread to the limbs, which cannot be tolerated. The turning point of all this happened when he was involved in an abnormal event, which was when he found a new job in the hazy city, either in a high-end or chicken feeding role. There are many abnormalities in this world, and chicken farms also encounter them. When he is feeding chickens there, a chicken's head explodes and more than 10 blood vessel-like tendrils emerge, crazily devouring its own kind, not even letting go of the just laid egg. At that time, the distance he was at was still very safe. Faced with the sudden mutation of the hen, Zheng Yichen had an impulse from inside out, as if a person who had been hungry for a long time had seen a roasted chicken. Driven by this impulse, he climbed up with his strong physique. It's just a chicken, even if it has tentacles, it's still a chicken. He won, but the owner of the chicken farm was very dissatisfied with it. He insisted on going to melee if something could be solved with a gun. That chicken mutated, but it was still locked in a cage, and the strength of the cage was not something that a mutated chicken could break free immediately. It was enough for the staff inside to use weapons to smash it. Zheng Yichen chose the most reckless way. The words of the chicken farm owner made Zheng Yichen feel very real. Just thinking about it, this world is not ancient either. When encountering such mutated things, we must use the safest way to solve them. People will get injured if they go up, but shooting from a distance with a gun will be fine. At the worst, a crossbow can also be used. The difficulty of obtaining that thing is much lower than that of a gun. The chicken farm owner can hold a gun, and some of the safety equipment in the chicken farm, besides fire protection, includes crossbows. However, these things are all locked and connected to the local police station. In case of emergency, you can directly contact the chicken farm owner to obtain authorization. In case of emergency, you can bypass this authorization, but you must scan your face and record personal photos. Anyway, weapons can be taken out immediately to deal with unexpected situations. He didn't lose his job because of this. At that time, he was the first to rush forward. Although he was a bit reckless, as long as he wasn't too unlucky, he wouldn't be easily killed by a mutated chicken. Not to mention Zheng Yichen's strong physique and courage, the owner of the chicken farm only emphasized that in the next situation, long-range weapon attacks should be the main approach. It's okay to accidentally harm other chickens, as long as you don't accidentally harm people. As for the same kind of chickens that mutated chickens eat, that's not important. A mutated chicken has a higher price in the market, one is worth 100. I don't know how many schools are eager to purchase that thing for teachers and students to use, and some are planning to buy it back and eat it. Mutated organisms are also living beings, but they just undergo certain changes in the individual. It's not like after a mutation, they turn from meat to stone. As long as they are processed well, they are still a delicacy. As long as the mutated chicken can be taken down, the ordinary chickens that died seem insignificant. And Zheng Yichen, who had completed his first killing of mutated creatures in his life, also discovered the changes he had undergone. After being infected with the blood of mutated hens, he did not feel anything at the time, nor did he even notice that the blood had decreased or faded. It was only when he returned to his residence to take a shower that he realized these problems and that his wilt disease had eased somewhat. It was much more useful than his daily exercise, but unfortunately the mutated hen was taken away and there was no chance to try some inexplicable impulse at that time. That mutated hen also became the first mention on his resume, the abnormal creature he killed with his own abilities. Why not write it down? No one else has ever killed that kind of chicken with their own hands, so he kept working while searching for other abnormalities. He didn't find much and couldn't afford it. The small ones, most of them are ordinary people. As long as they have the courage and some personal force to cross the line, and as long as they don't have bad luck, they can basically be killed. Even if it's more troublesome, the threat is equivalent to a PK between a crocodile ashore and a human wielding a knife. It's not impossible to fight, but the key is that not many people have the courage to fight. Facing it directly is not through watching a video. Watching the cute lion, tiger, and monster in the video, it's another thing to actually face it. Originally, as long as he took off his clothes, he would expose his body like withered tree bark. Now, except for a few traces, he is in the same state as a few years ago, and there is hardly any problem to be seen. All of this resulted in a large number of mutated small animals dying at his hands. He can be certain that his strange illness is not a real illness, but something similar to a golden finger. Although it caused him a lot of trouble when he came to this world, he also worked hard to exercise in order to resist this thing, and his physique has always been good. The self-discipline exercise enhanced by the combination of golden fingers and pressure can be considered double the happiness, right? What made him somewhat regretful was that this golden finger was not a system or something like that, but a special ability. There are special powers in this world, and all parts involving special powers are within an abnormal range, specifically abnormal. These are similar to Earth, but not Earth, and special forces are not secrets. They will not be sent to any research institute if they have any special characteristics. The method of slicing and studying is even more outdated, unless a corpse is sent, and this aspect has little to do with him. Those had nothing to do with him. He found a way to alleviate or even completely eliminate his own wilt disease, which was related to those abnormal creatures. After accumulating enough experience, he couldn't wait to go to the banquet bar and register his identity. After bringing the proof over, he can officially receive the hunter certificate, and at that time, he can obtain a lot of free intelligence without having to struggle to run around and search for mutated creatures that are not easy to find in the city. A chicken farm. Mutated chickens are also the property of the chicken farm owner. If they are killed in a timely manner, there will be a bonus, but that thing still belongs to the chicken farm owner and has nothing to do with the employees. Other farms follow the same rules. Zhang Yichen encountered that kind of thing 3 times at the chicken farm, but each time it was just a little blood-stained. In the end, he resigned from his job there and began his formal amateur hunting. It was only in formal amateur hunting that he gained a clearer understanding and awareness of his illness. By now, those mutated small animals can no longer meet his needs, but his wilt disease has not been eradicated yet. It is obviously unrealistic to rely on bullying small animals to become the 10-mile slope sword god, just like leveling up by fighting monsters, ultimately leaving the novice village. Then let's go out of the mountain. After patting my chest, I have to say that exercising is very addictive. In the past, it was just for survival, but now I'm used to it. I feel uncomfortable without compressing my muscles every day. After playing with the heavy barbells at home for over half an hour with ease, Zhang Yichen hummed a tune and took a cold shower, leaning against the bed to read the Battle Techniques book bought from the street vendor. He had the intention to find some powerful people to learn some skills, but he couldn't find them without contacting those circles. Looking for common ordinary martial arts schools would also be suitable if it was to strengthen his body, but he had already passed the stage of needing to strengthen his body. There should be a true legend in the martial arts school, but true legends are not the kind of cabbage that can be bought in the market. What Zhang Yichen wants more is quick success. If the abnormality on his body is not so serious, he can calm down and hone it for a few years, but he doesn't have that time. Let's learn from the circle of hunters through practical experience. For this, he plans to go kill a chicken early tomorrow morning. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Dark Mist Phenomenon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Dark Mist Phenomenon. Upon waking up, Zhang Yichen washed his face, opened the curtains, and looked out at the thin mist outside the window. The characteristics of the hazy city had become familiar to him, and this characteristic had not affected the lives of the locals. Looking at himself in the mirror with his bare upper body, Zhang Yichen carefully rubbed the slight creases on his skin, then put on his clothes and left his residence to have breakfast downstairs, starting today's plan. He wants to find a suitable target. He wants to find a mutated chicken. Although there may be some exceptions, in order to obtain the certificate as quickly as possible, such as the license, let's use the simplest and quickest choice. After all, choosing that kind of thing will not affect what he needs to do in the future. This is not a task in the game where the final reward is determined by the rating. Xiaoqing, are you planning to go fishing? The breakfast stall owner looked at the tools Zhang Yichen was carrying with him and asked with a smile. Yeah, just call me Changqing. Zhang Yichen settled the bill, his expression somewhat tense. His current name for external use is Changqing, which can be used as a name or a contemporary account, and there is no problem using it. The reason for using this is also partly due to the reasons of this world. When he first arrived, he did not cut down and retrain everything, but only cut down half and grew up again in the initial stage. He saw an advertisement on a public TV on the roadside about the meaning of names. It looks a bit like counting names and fortune-telling on Earth. Generally speaking, this thing doesn't play on TV stations, does it? Zhang Yichen, who had been cautious, used Changqing. He had no acquaintances in this world, so he could say whatever he wanted. The breakfast stall owner, who was just mixed up, shouted one little green after another, feeling strange every time he heard it. I won't encounter someone named Fahai in the future, will I? Then pay more attention, the weather forecast says there will be strong fog today. The breakfast stall owner charged and reminded Zhang Yichen. I will pay attention. Zhang Yichen left here carrying his bag. Misty weather occasionally appears in the hazy city, but strong fog does not occur a few times a year. If it does, it is important to pay more attention. Encountering such weather, the hazy city will basically shut down. I took out my phone and looked at the weather forecast. The strong fog only appears in the afternoon, which does not affect what he needs to do in the future. If he is lucky, he can quickly find the target he is looking for. If he is unlucky, he can find a nearby hotel to stay overnight. Anyway, He is alone in this world, and there is not much pressure on him to go on a spontaneous trip. But his luck doesn't seem to be very good today. He used to squat in abnormal places every 3 to 5 times, waited for more than 2 hours, and didn't notice anything. It seems like the impact of the upcoming strong fog weather. Looking at the river not far away, Zheng Yichen had an impulse to throw a shot. Anyway, he didn't wait for the desired target in this place. So, throw 2 shots. Are you all here? A few minutes later, Zheng Yichen sat by the river, unfolded his fishing rod in his hand, and looked seriously at the misty river in front of him. Fishing could also catch abnormal creatures. Even the chicken farms of the 8 classics may produce abnormal old hens due to the abundance of chickens, and places like rivers are also very likely to produce something abnormal. The fish in the river are all dead today. After looking at the time, Zheng Yichen left here with his bag in hand. If we waited any longer, the strong fog would come. At that time, there was no distinction between humans and animals within 50 meters, and even walking could step into the river with 1 foot. The vegetable market is temporarily open due to the strong fog forecast. Even if there is still an hour before the arrival of the forecast, they cannot make any money in their own pockets. With a murmur in his heart, Zheng Yichen arrived at the nearby hotel and had no plans to go back. There was not enough time, and the vegetable market had closed, let alone the station. The hotel room prices have tripled. The prices are rising more elsewhere, you know when this is. The middle-aged owner of the hotel had a bright smile, and as a fisherman, he didn't think so much anymore. Understood. Zheng Yichen exclaimed in his heart, 3 times the housing price is 3 times. In fact, this is not considered a violation here. After all, there are forecasts for strong foggy weather, so when going out in this weather, one should be prepared for it. It has to be said that there are quite a few people who commit suicide. Just look at the list of registered names and times on the registration form, and you will know that this is also an exemption registration form. It mainly avoids some people from forcibly committing suicide, sneaking out in strong fog weather, writing their names on it to complete the registration, and whatever happens afterwards has nothing to do with this hotel. The strong and dense fog in the hazy city will be accompanied by more anomalies. It is said that under such weather conditions, those hunters will also try to avoid going out as much as possible. In fact, Zheng Yichen is not very clear about how to do it. He learned more about this information from the internet and news. Only by truly joining this circle can we gradually understand what the situation is. In addition to hunters, there is also a group of people who like to run around in foggy weather, just like the Earth wind chasers before his crossing. They know that tornadoes are very dangerous in places, but still chase them to record the changes and grandeur of tornadoes. The strong fog weather is not a tornado, but the anomalies exhibited by this weather are worth recording. The official has relevant records, and there are also some idle people in the public who do it. Although the official does not advocate this behavior, it cannot withstand the human heart of death. Similarly, on the internet, Zheng Yichen has seen brief recorded clips, with scenes of the apocalypse appearing in the thick fog, just like a mirage. The clarity is not high, but the general details can be seen clearly. Some people have compared these clips specifically, but have not found a specific location. Then there will be no follow-up on this matter. It not only satisfies the curiosity of ordinary people, but also does not reveal any more secrets or anomalies that ordinary people can understand. The duration of the strong fog in the weather forecast will not exceed 10 hours. As long as you stay in the hotel for 1 night, you can travel normally the next day. He has chargers and power banks, and although the signal in strong foggy weather may be affected, most of that signal is maintained by the signal tower. Overall, the network signal in the hotel is still good. It doesn't affect browsing online information and communicating with netizens from around the world. On the forum, netizens from Misty City expressed that they have seen this kind of thing for a long time. In foggy weather, they can occasionally see thick fog churning in the distance, as if there are some monsters fighting, which is more exciting than some big films. Netizens from other cities expressed dissatisfaction, as there is no evidence or pictures. If you want them to believe it, it would be better to send a picture. Brushing the forum made Zheng Yichen's heart a bit restless. It was just posting pictures. What a big deal. He glanced at it for over an hour and returned to normal from the flat support he was maintaining. He rubbed his shoulders and pulled open the curtains. It has to be said that the weather forecast was really on time. Previously, it was just a thin fog, but now it is thick fog rolling outside. The fog lights on the roadside have been turned on, and visibility is still low. Zheng Yichen clicked and took a photo of the thick fog outside, then flipped it onto the forum, presenting a fresh photo. Heavy fog is a major feature of the hazy city, so although Zheng Yichen uploaded a photo, he also appreciated this weather. The thick fog in the distance seemed to be torn apart, surging and churning, as if it had been sucked away by some unknown existence. Looking at the video on my phone, I also looked at the changes in fog in the distance. Ah, is this so coincidental? Quick, fast, we've really encountered an illusion. We're going to make a profit this time. Zheng Yichen, who had just opened it, heard a nearby cry and extended his head. The person next door also saw Zheng Yichen with a somewhat unnatural expression, but when they saw the bag hanging on Zheng Yichen's shoulder, they immediately realized, "Brother, you're also ready." The person made a gesture of slipping out while speaking. "This is the third floor, but the other party is well prepared and the ropes are ready. It's still easy to leave. Let's go separately," Zheng Yichen said. "That would be great. Peers are enemies, and the Mistwalkers in the Misty City have team actions, but those teams will not come together. This thing can capture more than just one person. Videos from far distances are all the same, and their research value is not high. Videos from close distances are different. They cannot balance all perspectives. Zheng Yichen's proposal is just right, and taking separate actions is the best way to get along. There is more than one research institute that has acquired this type of video recording. They ran away with ropes, while Zheng Yichen climbed the wall and ran away directly. To be honest, if that vision was too far away from here, he specified that he wouldn't have too many ideas, but the problem was that the vision was too close, with a visual distance of no more than 200 meters. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. First, handcuff it away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. First, handcuff it away. Zheng Yichen wondered if this type of video recording could be used as proof. It can be said that while selling, it is used as proof. Hunters need to deal with anomalies, not become photographers. To use it as proof, they probably need to set up their own recording equipment and use their own power to directly destroy the anomalies that appear. It's a bit difficult. Another group of foggers, chose a different path from Zheng Yichen, and Zheng Yichen could even see some other, fellow travelers. This is close to the suburbs and not an uninhabited area. When anomalies appear up close, many people choose to avoid them, but there are also people who want to satisfy their curiosity. Zheng Yichen's vision was still very accurate. The place where the anomaly appeared was not more than 300 meters away from the hotel where he was located. As he approached the scene, he could see a crack in the thick fog more clearly. The mist around him poured into the crack, covered by the thick fog like a waterfall, making it difficult to see the specific color clearly. Is this really a vision? Zheng Yichen's eyes widened. It was his first time getting up close to the dense fog of the hazy city, and he had only seen some clips online before. Facing the surging and tumultuous mist, a tense sense of pressure spread throughout his body, and Zheng Yichen steadily held up his phone. He is still very clear about the purpose of coming here, despite his nervousness. In the tumultuous thick fog, one could vaguely see some huge black shadows wriggling. The shadows seemed to be trying to gather and run out of the sunken cracks, and the mist did not obscure the sound. As the black shadows were pupae, he could hear some distant screams. And the piercing barking of dogs. Wong wong wong. Ahem! The barking of the dog turned into a howling sound like a wolf. Zheng Yichen looked towards the place where the sound came from, with 4 people running and 1 dog chasing. Originally an ordinary stray dog, it had already become alienated at this moment, with its fur slightly wriggling as if it had come back to life. The alienation caused by abnormal animal behavior was varied, and what Zheng Yichen saw was still within his understanding. At least this is still a dog. Even if the physique has grown a lot and the crimson strong muscles are exposed under the damaged skin, it is still a dog, right? A dog with more teeth. The piercing meowing of the cat followed, and after seeing the owner clearly, Zheng Yichen's corner of the eye twitched, and whose leopard ran out. This thing is much more dangerous than that dog. It seems that within the scope of the anomaly, all the small animals here have undergone obvious abnormalities, so what about humans? Zheng Yichen quickly touched his chest, but the sensation still subsided. He breathed a sigh of relief and continued to quietly follow the group of folk foggers being chased by the dog, preparing to take action against the dog. At the same time, it is also clear that there is a difference between folk foggers and official foggers, and it is no wonder that the authorities do not advocate for folk foggers to pursue anomalies in the thick fog. If it were the official mistwalker who came here, it is estimated that they have already attacked and counterattacked. If you want to hold a gun in the Misty City, generally speaking, you need a suitable identity, which is definitely not suitable for ordinary people. The reason why a chicken farm owner can hold a gun is because the other party is a chicken farm owner, and that is the appropriate identity. As Zheng Yichen was about to launch a sneak attack without any respect for martial arts, a big mouse suddenly popped out. Its body size was even larger than an ordinary cat, and the tubular tongue exposed in its open mouth proved that it had also become an abnormal creature. The big mouse bit straight at Zheng Yichen's calf. Before touching Zheng Yichen, a nimble and silent figure flashed by and bit directly at the back of the big mouse's neck. That cat. Then several new big mice emerged from the thick fog, staring at the cat unkindly. The cat, holding the big mouse that had already entered, gracefully jumped up and bounced off the nearby wall with the help of a street lamp. Zheng Yichen's gaze withdrew from the curved street lamp and without any hesitation, strategically shifted. The few large mice, carrying more of them, squeaked and chased after him. At the same time, other foggers encountered some problems and the entire area became completely chaotic. A running big mouse was pierced by a black long stick and lifted up in the head. The big mouse's body quickly withered and was thrown to the ground, breaking into pieces. It's not as good as a chicken, Zheng Yichen spat and shook his fishing rod. His thrusts were still very accurate, mainly trained by hunting small animals before. Those mutated small animals were not big in size, but their speed was not slow. The remaining large mice sniffed around the fragments on the ground, their crimson eyes fixed on Zheng Yichen, who was about to run and pull him again, and gradually retreated. When Zheng Yichen found the dog, it was impatiently staring at the crack in the thick fog, appearing restless. Seeing this scene, Zheng Yichen couldn't help but pause for a moment and said, "Did those people run in?" Ahem. The abnormal dog didn't answer Zheng Yichen and roared as it rushed towards him. Before approaching Zheng Yichen, he was pierced by a 2-meter-long black gun barrel and engaged in combat with most abnormal creatures. As long as these abnormal creatures did not have any way to prolong their attacks, the advantage of long-handled weapons was undeniable. It was relatively easy to find the opportunity to kill them in one shot. Abnormal organisms are also living organisms. Breathing out, Zheng Yichen looked at the crack in the thick fog. Someone really ran in panic. He glanced at the corpse of a wild dog next to him, which looked like a dry corpse. Next, he just needed to bring it back to obtain evidence. A dog is no better than a chicken, and by the way, he also received new intelligence. Near the anomalies in the dense fog, abnormal organisms are more likely to appear. This is a new knowledge point that has not been learned in news and the internet. In the cracks of the thick fog, Zheng Yichen saw a huge black shadow that gradually shrank. The appearance of the anomaly this time did not last long, which made him slightly regretful. But then a black figure emerged from the churning thick fog, dragging several corpses behind him. The other party also saw Zheng Yichen, and then their gaze fell on the corpse of the dog. Local warriors. Then these people are left to you, don't let them cause us any more trouble. Zheng Yichen could understand what the other person was saying, but the problem was that the person who came was wearing a big dog head. For a moment, Zheng Yichen thought that the other person was not a relative of that dog and directly came to seek revenge. As a result, he just threw those unconscious people back and left a sentence, hastily returning to the thick fog. The departing dog's head made Zheng Yichen ponder as he looked at the crack in the thick fog. So is this crack really just a simple anomaly? He couldn't help but think of some fragments he had seen online before that were just like the picture. This made Zheng Yichen have an impulse to enter the illusion and explore the truth. He also looked at the unlucky ones brought out by the dog's head, and apart from being bitten twice by the dog and the wound looking very grim, there was no other damage. In the distance, the sound of police sirens was also heard, and the response speed of the hazy city to the area where the anomaly appeared was very fast. Zheng Yichen hesitated for a moment and walked towards the depths of the crack. He was ready to deal with the abnormality, so it was better to learn more about the current situation. As he approached the core area of the anomaly, Zheng Yichen felt a strong pressure that made him feel a sense of difficulty breathing, similar to altitude sickness, and he could faint at any time. Then, this strange feeling was swept away, replaced by a relaxed feeling of lifting the load after heavy training, and the fog in his vision gradually dissipated. Click, he took his fishing rod and backpack with both hands, and a handcuff was placed on Zheng Yichen's wrist. Zheng Yichen saw the dog's head and was helped by the hat he was wearing, which should be a police cap. Why are you? Forget it, handcuff it first. Wait. I don't know what happened yet, where is this? I don't know what happened. Did you invade illegally? Dog head said with a strange expression. You have good adaptability. Let's take a note first, and I'll tell you the rest later. What are you? At the temporary supervision office, Zheng Yichen discovered that he was not the only person being detained here. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Of course you can go back. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Of course you can go back. Good afternoon everyone, my name is Changqing. Zheng Yichen greeted someone who had the same experience, although some of them looked not human. Just like the dog head just now. No one paid attention to Zheng Yichen. The people being handcuffed here were observing the surroundings. Zheng Yichen lowered his head and tugged at the handcuffs in his hand, confirming that it was not something he could tear open with his own strength. Another thing is that while staying here, he clearly felt a certain change in his body, which was a kind of excitement all over his body. The temporary supervision office also provided water, but no one here touched it. The dog head arrived here shortly after, holding a stack of documents and saying, "My name is George, and I will start telling you the specific situation now." Doghead George said and sent out those materials. Zheng Yichen looked at the content above and raised his eyebrows slightly. He was a bit puzzled just now, and now he can confirm that he can understand the words that are obviously not normal people, not for special reasons, but the words used here are the same as those on his side. The content on the information mentions their current situation. In simple terms, they have traveled literally from their own world to another world. This is not something that just anyone can do. When a normal person approaches a crack, they lose consciousness and faint near the crack due to the pressure of the crack. Except for a few unlucky individuals who may get caught in the crack, the rest will not truly pass through the crack. Zheng Yichen immediately thought of the several foggers who had been dragged out by Doghead George like dragging corpses before. When he entered the illusion, he did feel a burst of pressure, but that pressure did not have much impact on him. He took a few steps and passed smoothly. As stated in the information, a person who can withstand pressure means that they have good adaptability. The environment of different worlds is different. Suddenly encountering another world is like being directly sent to a plateau in a normal environment, which is unbearable for a normal person. So with this passive barrier, a large number of curious people can be directly screened out, and the remaining few are the members of this temporary regulatory agency. Including Zhang Yichen himself. Can we still go back? A person with scales on his hands raised his own. Of course, said Doghead George calmly, clearly not dealing with this kind of thing for the first time. Look at the fog over there. The cracks in the fog are related to this world, but the other end is not related to another world. You can come here through the cracks, but if you leave here, you will have to try multiple times. Also, when asking questions, read the information first before asking. Zhang Yichen continued to look at the information in his hand, and it was indeed possible to go back. A crack may be related to a complex world, but this crack is divided into primary and secondary planes. The place on the primary plane is only related to one world, and the secondary plane may be related to multiple worlds. When people in the world associated with the secondary plane of the crack pass through the crack, they will only come to the main side of the crack. When the person on the main side of the crack passes through the crack, it may appear in any world associated with the secondary side. There is a lot of randomness, which is not something that can be controlled by humans. Zhang Yichen and some people who don't look like normal people will concentrate here, but the cracks on their side belong to the secondary surface. It's not difficult to go back, as long as you try multiple times with repeated horizontal jumps. As long as it's not too unlucky, you can usually go back. However, according to the information, there have been such unlucky people who have jumped multiple times without returning to their own world. In the end, due to the pressure they bear, they fainted directly in a world that is not their own. At that time, the cracks also disappeared due to their duration, and the secondary cracks connected more than 10 worlds with a short duration. And the most important point mentioned in the information is the issue of power utilization. In the past, when someone came here and turned back, they encountered a world with lower individual strength, and then that person wanted to rely on their own strength to stay there, waiting for the cracks to disappear before starting to do whatever they wanted. As a result, that person died. The reason is simple, that person's power utilization rate is not high in another world, and the environmental conditions of that world limit the opponent's power utilization. The opponent was directly shot and killed by random bullets, and it was a miserable situation. A lot of the information on the profile is summarized from the lives of you people. You can try it out without taking it seriously, George said, with a smile on his dog's face. This profile will be updated again. Besides choosing to go back, you have an additional option. Stay here, and we will arrange a suitable identity for you. People who need to work will also get a good job. I have to choose to leave, said the person with scales on their hand who spoke first. The environment here is too bad for me to adapt to. The other person immediately grabbed the bottle next to him, unscrewed the lid, and poured it down from the beginning. What I like is that humid environment. Oh, don't worry about this, we can also arrange it here. Actually, people like you are still very popular. George's dog smiled on his head, looking like a smiling Shiba dog. He typed something on a device similar to a fax machine, then pulled out a few A4 sheets of paper and handed them to the man. After the other party finished reading, they fell silent, hesitating was like a heart. Zhang Yichen's vision was good, and he saw a small amount of content on the paper, which seemed to be a job recruitment about the ocean. Zhang Yichen also noticed that Doghead George's attention had always been focused on those obviously not ordinary people, and standard humans like him were always overlooked. What are the work arrangements for someone like me who chooses to stay? Zhang Yichen asked at this moment. It depends on your personal education and practical skills. The general meaning is that humans with higher education or extremely high combat effectiveness are more likely to be arranged, while those with ordinary abilities are more likely to be like that. You can think carefully. This crack is very stable and can last for more than 6 hours. People who feel tired can take a break first. You can choose to go back now, but if you come here quietly again later, you won't be sent here. Doghead George did not mention the fact that someone deliberately stayed in another world. The information is very clear. Even if one relies on their personal strength to go to those low-strength worlds, they will be unable to do as they please due to adaptability, and may even be killed, becoming research materials there. They are not responsible for their personal choices, let alone for maintaining the security of other worlds. Zheng Yichen, who discovered the new world, must have chosen to go back. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Buy early and enjoy early. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Buy early and enjoy early. Doghead George is very curious about the world on his side, but even if he is pressed here, he cannot learn more. Seeing Doghead George's behavior, the other party takes this opportunity to introduce talents here, and has little interest in ordinary humans. They are very concerned about those who have non-human characteristics. Perhaps this is the kind of existence that naturally has some special passivity, right? Not to mention anything else, George, the dog head wearing this world police uniform in front of him, should not have a worse sense of smell than a normal dog. So it's better to slip away. After returning to the hazy city and obtaining the license, he will also become a folk fog walker while encountering anomalies. He doesn't believe that this situation can also occur in other visions that appear in the thick fog. As soon as he arrived, he was handcuffed. "Are you leaving?" "Then hurry up," said Doghead George directly. His main goal was to retain people with specialization, not Zheng Yichen. People with specialization are very popular in many industries in this world, and those with scales are very stable in their work in the ocean. As for humans like Zheng Yichen, it's not impossible to stay, mainly because there are too many humans. One more not much, one more not much. So Zheng Yichen sent the confiscated items back to their previous location and said, "It's okay to come back after walking the way, but returning after more than half an hour would be a violation." Doghead George reminded Zheng Yichen that Zheng Yichen had entered the mist directly. Looking at the surroundings, his luck was not so good. The place he appeared in this time was not a familiar environment, but a very humid area with some active figures visible in the mist. There were also some nearby people who couldn't stand up and had scales on their bodies. In this environment, Zheng Yichen could clearly feel that his body sensation had changed again. If he had felt extra physical activity in the world of dog heads before, then here he felt the environment was active. He can vaguely feel the water vapor in the environment, which is not the normal feeling of a humid environment. Without any pause, Zheng Yichen retreated and left here. Although he had the idea of continuing to explore, he mainly returned to the world he had lived in for a long time after crossing over. "Oh. Are you going the wrong way?" Dog-headed George looked at Zheng Yichen returning and gently raised his eyebrows, saying, "I'm a bit curious. Since you want to recruit people, why don't you just go over and recruit them?" "That's useless," said George the dog-head bluntly. "We can't actively pass through cracks, our adaptability is too poor." "Understood." Zheng Yichen ran back into the mist, and George, the dog's head, looked at Zheng Yichen's back. The dog's face showed a slight expression of contemplation. Other people who could pass through cracks would feel tired after repeatedly jumping horizontally in a short period of time, mainly due to the pressure caused by the cracks. Zheng Yichen doesn't seem to be tired at all. Is he too adaptable or hidden? Doghead George didn't wait for Zheng Yichen to come back again. Zheng Yichen, who returned to the Misty City for the second time, was somewhat moved. On George's side, there was only fog where cracks appeared, while on this side of the Misty City, it is famous for having fog all year round. Will there be any similarities between this fog and the fog covered by cracks? Zheng Yichen is not sure about these, but he knows that the Misty City must be a place with a high incidence of cracks. After returning, Zheng Yichen immediately found a place to hide until the security personnel who were blocking the scene found and drove him away. The attitude of the security personnel towards Zheng Yichen was quite impatient. After they blocked the scene, the folk foggers began playing hide and seek. Until now, not all have been found. Moreover, they also need to rescue some foggers who have fainted near the anomaly, clean up nearby active abnormal creatures. As for those abnormal creatures, there will be a high rescue bill waiting for them in the future. The ones who are awake are mainly driven away, and confiscating their equipment is not a secret. The fog in the Misty City is not a secret, as long as the network is well managed. Moreover, the existence of these folk foggers has made many breakthrough progress in local research on the illusion. With too many people filming, there will always be some difficult to capture scenes. After fooling him, Zheng Yichen breathed a slight sigh of relief and put away his phone. Banquet bar. The bartender looked at Zheng Yichen's arrival and raised an eyebrow slightly. You didn't bring a chicken, how many big mice did you bring? What's wrong with the big mouse? The big mouse is also mutated. Zheng Yichen shook the bag in his hand. Okay, come with me. The bartender took his gaze back from the bag. The big mouse inside, Zheng Yichen, had been cleaned when he brought it over, so it didn't emit any unusual odor. This polite behavior is still very good. He took Zheng Yichen to the backstage of the bar and rechecked the big mice with gloves. The bartender was quite surprised and said, the technique is good, they all died in one blow. Every fatal injury of a big mouse is a wound that runs through its head, not caused by firearms, but by something similar to a long gun. The movement speed of a big mouse is not slow, and it can accurately penetrate the head of this thing. It was really Zheng Yichen who did it, so he admitted that he underestimated this young man. After confirming that there was no problem with the proof, the bartender simply pulled out the photos he had taken before, printed out a license, and then took a seal on it. After shaping it, he handed it to Zheng Yichen and said, from today on, you are a hunter. Wishing you a long journey on this road. Those who can't go far are all dead. The process of obtaining a license is not complicated, and this world is also in the era of the internet. It's just about obtaining a license. How much trouble can it be? Zheng Yichen took out his phone and said, I still have a close-up video of the anomaly on my end. Can I accept it here? Did the anomaly appear yesterday? The specific value depends on how much useful information you captured. The bartender took out a list, which marked the purchase price for the video footage of the anomaly, ranging from 20 yuan to 2 million yuan. The actual value depends on what was captured near the anomaly, the clarity of the image, and so on. Zheng Yichen took out a part of the video, including a part about the process of George the dog head walking out of the fog. He took it with his phone, and the picture quality was naturally not as clear as that of professional equipment. However, such a large dog head, you're really lucky. The purchase price for such videos usually starts at 50,000 yuan. The bartender didn't ask where the follow-up videos are, but directly set a price. You can find another research institute to sell them. We don't mainly focus on purchasing this type of video here, and we charge a 5% commission on the selling price for proxy purchases. You may think it's a bit high, but it's absolutely honest in this regard. So cool. Can you explain in detail? Just taking a picture of George with a dog's head can give us this starting price. Isn't that professional equipment shooting supposed to take off? The bartender smiled lightly and threw the gloves he had just taken off into the trash can. If you want to know more details, it will cost you money, ranging from 50,000 to 500,000, he said. Of course you can also choose to explore on your own. Buying intelligence emphasizes buying early and enjoying it early. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Is actually a wild tester. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 is actually a wild tester. Do you want to buy it? Of course not, Zheng Yichen has thought about the video and sold it directly through a banquet bar agent. The deposit is the price just quoted by the bartender. After that, the bar's commission will be taken from the final transaction price, with more refunds and less subsidies. The bartender was very professional and signed a contract with Zheng Yichen. There will be results within 3 days, and generally speaking, you can come here the next day. After the bartender finished speaking, he changed the topic. As a new hunter, you may be interested in some commissions. Of course, that's why I came here. Zheng Yichen is very interested in this topic. Come with me. He thought the bartender would take him to a secret room that looked very provocative, but he returned to the bar. The bartender who had washed his hands brought out a menu for Zheng Yichen, which contained some recent task assignments, such as a weekly inspection of XX breeding farm and security tasks for the research institute. The shortest time will not be less than 3 days, and the longest time will not exceed half a month. This makes Zheng Yichen have a subtle sense of not only looking for hunters to do big things, but also specifically looking for temporary workers named hunters. The beginning of the newcomer. Seeing Zheng Yichen's slightly skeptical gaze, the bartender smiled and said, "These are all very suitable for novice hunters. Do you have something more advanced? Then we need to go out." The bartender didn't say much nonsense and directly took out a new menu for Zheng Yichen to take a look at. He just glanced at it and skipped it directly. At this time, I still choose some relatively simple types. The ones above are obviously the ones I can't afford. Zheng Yichen also saw a commission on it to suppress the dragon beast of the mist. The standard for this kind of thing in the game is at the level of 25 players, right? He felt that he should go step by step first, level up the monsters well, accumulate intelligence, and then talk about these things. He picked up the menu just now, and Zheng Yichen looked at a research institute commission and said, "That's it." Zheng Yichen has been staying in places like breeding farms for a long time, but it's better to be in places like research institutes. I'm curious if I haven't been in contact with them before. Well, my personal suggestion is not to be too persistent after going, just give up when it's time. The bartender saw Zheng Yichen make a choice and said directly, taking out a tablet and retrieving relevant information. "Scan face or scan card?" "Card it." Zheng Yichen took out his license that he had just obtained and had not yet obtained. After scanning it, the bartender nodded at him and said, "It's okay. Those research institutes should have their own personal strength, why do they still need security personnel?" Zheng Yichen asked curiously, seeing that the task had been registered. The bartender smiled but didn't say a word. Zheng Yichen understood and said, "Have another glass of what I had last time." After serving him a glass of wine, the bartender finally spoke up and said, "The security mission is just an external claim, in fact, it's about finding some testers. So as long as the person who accepts the commission passes by, there will inevitably be something out of control over there. Let's take it to the point." The bartender shook his head and said, "Strictly speaking, this is a type of practical exercise where we study all our own security forces, but those security forces are trained collectively and are different from civilian hunters. To obtain more actual data, the Research Institute needs to rely solely on internal security forces." Oh, Zheng Yichen nodded, indicating that he understood. It's probably like the martial arts experts in the folk and soldiers trained in the military. Soldiers who have undergone strict training are very good at fighting, and folk martial arts experts who have not undergone military training are also very good at fighting. They are all very good at fighting, but in terms of expertise, their combat habits are completely different. Since that's the case, why don't we just explain it directly on top of this? It's such a big deal. After understanding the specific reason, Zheng Yichen chuckled. The nature is different. The bartender did not explain too much in this regard, and after becoming a hunter, he encountered many abnormalities. Even some controllable abnormal research in the Research Institute could encounter accidents, including the commission that Zheng Yichen has taken on now. Zheng Yichen is alone, so it can be felt that this operation is a bit troublesome. For those research institutes, this is a necessary process. The information has been registered. In 2 days, you can go to the Nifida Research Institute in Luyun District and come here to collect money. The bartender put away the tablet and said, if you want to play here, I can recommend some good wine friends for you. It sounds like a lot of money, won't the money in my pocket run out all night? The bartender remained noncommittal and said, it depends on how you choose. Generally speaking, that kind of situation doesn't happen. I am very curious about this extraordinary situation. The general situation is simply to find normal drinking friends who can drink and compete with each other. Whoever loses will pay the bill, as long as they can enjoy the drink. The unusual situation is that a beautiful sister accompanies them on site. This is suitable for experienced people, but for beginners, it doesn't necessarily mean who will accompany whom. I'll just drink this, no matter how high it is, I find it bitter. Zheng Yichen shook the glass containing fruit wine in his hand and said, how many hunters are there? If you ask for money, then forget it. This is free. The bartender smiled and said, actually, when you get familiar with this industry, you can basically see it. It's not a problem to tell you now. Half of the people here are hunters, and many of the others come here to find excitement. Zheng Yichen used to be able to find out about the banquet bar, let alone others. However, being able to do so does not mean that those people are thinking that they have nothing to do with dangerous anomalies. What they want to encounter here is just excitement. If they cannot be hunters, making friends with them is also possible. It's easy for you to date a girl with a hunter's license now. The bartender gave Zheng Yichen a young man who knew how to look at him and gestured for him to move his position. He was about to receive a new guest. 2 days later, Zheng Yichen returned to the banquet bar and saw the bartender talking to someone else. He found a place to sit down. There were more than one bartender at the banquet bar, but he was not familiar with the others. After waiting for the guests received by the bartender to leave, Zheng Yichen immediately walked over and looked at Zheng Yichen as he approached. The bartender smiled and said, is it the same as before? Okay. So he placed another glass of fruit wine in front of him. The bartender continued, your video includes a conversation, so the final total price is 120,000 yuan. After deducting the handling fee, it is 14,000 yuan and has already been taxed. Those research institutes are so kind. Zheng Yichen was surprised. How can you attract people if you are not kind? The content of your video communication is too simple. If there is more, it is estimated that the price can be much higher. The bartender said that Zheng Yichen suffered a loss of experience. Zheng Yichen thinks this money is really easy to earn. Listening to his emotions, the bartender smiled lightly and said, that's because you're lucky. Those who are not lucky are not like this kind of communication anymore, and there may even be life-threatening situations. This money is really hard to earn, and you can't keep watching what you've earned. Everyone only looks at what they have earned and rarely at what has gone wrong. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Standard Enhancement Strategy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Standard Enhancement Strategy. Leaving the banquet bar, Zheng Yichen pondered on some things. The officials in the hazy city also knew about the connection between the supernatural and other worlds. Generally speaking, when mentioning other worlds, the first thing that comes to mind is issues such as mutual invasion. But currently, it seems that this is not the case. It may be due to the fact that the cracks caused by those anomalies did not last for a long time, or it may be some other reason. At the same time, this kind of thing does not seem to be a secret that needs special confidentiality in the hunter's circle. Luyun District, Nifida Research Institute. After arriving here to report on the arranged dormitories, some colleagues have already arrived here in advance. From the appearance, it seems that these are all experienced hands. Damn it, he thought the menu recommended by the bartender was completely aimed at newcomers, but it turned out to be completely different from what he had in mind. However, it's also good. If he wants to quickly improve his combat effectiveness in this circle, he needs to find those experienced hunters and work with them to learn 2 moves. His combat style so far has been very simple, and his fighting skills, as seen in books, have basically no practical combat experience. He mainly has no practical targets and can only target small trees that do not know how to fight back. The remaining targets are all abnormal small animals. So currently he only knows 1 move. Stab. As long as your own stab is fast and accurate enough, you can quickly kill those mutated small animals. Even big mice cannot avoid it, provided that the opponent is within your attack range. Throwing, currently learning and pondering. The conditions of the dormitory look pretty good, the kind of 4-person room, the spaciousness is not bad, and the bedding and other items are all in the common style of the hotel. The hunters who came here first, Zheng Yichen, have already sorted out their things. Zheng Yichen sat on the last bed, checking his belongings. He didn't bring many extra items here, except for some daily necessities. The only thing left was a fishing rod. But it was those temporary roommates who brought a lot of things. They looked like a complete set of knives and firearms. Compared to them, Zheng Yichen looked shabby, like a bastard. Everyone here was like a newly assigned dormitory, and the initial atmosphere was quite awkward. "Do you want to play cards?" said a roommate. "Anyway, we will be staying here for at least half a month from now on." Of course it's possible, but there should be some pressure, right? The other person also became enthusiastic. Once someone led the conversation, it became much easier. Zheng Yichen didn't reject this atmosphere and directly joined in. It's just a matter of putting pressure on something, just like 10 yuan each. Everyone just got to know each other and it's not suitable to play too much. Zheng Yichen also doesn't like that kind of thing. Now this is purely an active atmosphere, and losing is not a big deal. After all, the daily salary here is 2,000. The kind of tax reporting in the research institute, these 2,000 are the security reports they are responsible for. Zheng Yichen learned a lot of insider information from the bartender. It is true that the daily salary is very high, but once such a commission is accepted, it is not allowed to be interrupted, and during this period, they are really responsible for the work required by the security agreement. Their security work is responsible for researching some abnormal organisms in the research institute. In the event of natural disasters or human disasters caused by external invasion, it is not within the scope of this agreement. After encountering such situations, they can participate in normal security work and solve those troubles, but there will be additional rewards. In addition, there will be no additional compensation for matters within their security work scope. They are responsible for handling abnormal creatures that may lose control with a daily salary of 2,000. If beginners who are not familiar with the situation come here, they will most likely find it easy to make the money. Fortunately, as long as you patrol here for half a month, you can get rich rewards. However, in reality, losing control is inevitable. The high daily salary almost tells these hunters to prepare for battle, and money is not so easy to get. Zheng Yichen quickly figured out the identities of these people, 2 of whom were retired soldiers from certain units outside of the city. After retiring, they did not adapt to normal life and did not want to be mercenaries who did anything with money, regardless of good or evil. So they came to the side of the hazy city and chose to become a hunter. Although hunters are also similar to mercenaries, they have more choices. In terms of business, they are basically not hands-on to their peers, but rather that kind of abnormality. The return is not bad, as for the danger. This is also mutual, it depends on how to choose. After all, there are experts and grassroots everywhere. See your own abilities clearly, don't idle and choose those obviously beyond your own abilities. Generally speaking, there won't be any problems. Is there no problem at all? How could that be? The other person is a standard Misty City person, who was involved in a disaster about anomalies in the past. At that time, he witnessed the strength exhibited by some problem solving hunters and wanted to become a hunter. I just don't seem to have much talent in this area. I've been working hard to train, but I've always been a low-level hunter, Jamie said somewhat helplessly. I've heard that some research institutes are researching ways to make people stronger, even by implanting abnormalities to increase their strength. I just wanted to take this opportunity to come here and try my luck. Abnormal things usually have side effects, don't they? Another Lewis, who was discharged from the army, said while playing cards. It's said that those high-end hunters are actually a bit abnormal, but I don't have much interest in those. They're pretty good right now. As a hunter, he has seen many anomalies before, and has taken on many security tasks such as research institutes. He has seen those abnormal creatures being studied, and those who are good at implanting that kind of thing are somewhat infiltrating. Maintaining the current conditions is very good, with a decent income and acceptable risks. The anomalies faced can be resolved with firearms. I'm a newcomer who hasn't been in the industry for long, and I'm currently thinking about how to quickly improve myself. Knowing that the people around me are not newcomers anymore, Zheng Yichen stopped acting. Although the menu recommended by the bartender was not right, he also did a lot of science popularization for him. He didn't take the initiative to say it, so he prepared to see what his colleague would say next. Lewis glanced at the things on Zheng Yichen's bed and a clear glance flashed in his eyes. Newcomers, this industry never lacks newcomers. Since you have accepted this kind of stability, be prepared for battle. Don't think about making a living, the money for the research institute is not so easy to get. There is also a simple way to quickly improve oneself. Go to the shooting range and spend more money, then take your license to the local relevant department to register, and buy 2 better guns to quickly improve your combat effectiveness. Lewis's words made the other 2 nod in agreement. This is indeed a very standard beginner hunter enhancement strategy, which is very useful. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Multiple testing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Multiple testing. The hunters of the Misty City were not trained from a young age. Along the way, there were many who gained special powers through certain experiences, and even experimental subjects who ran out of certain laboratories. Due to the enthusiastic care of some people, they made up their minds to become hunters and eliminate the bloodthirsty things that harm society. Ignoring those who already have very high strength or physical fitness, normal hunters who are halfway to becoming monks want to improve themselves. There is nothing faster than preparing 2 firearms. Want to have greater and faster improvement? Spend more money to buy more powerful weapons. This is the improvement strategy for most middle and low-level hunters. It is easy to use and understand, and the income of hunters is not bad. At the beginning, they may be nervous. If they deal with more things related to low-level abnormalities, they will have the courage and habits to develop, and everything will become easier. Thank you very much. Zheng Yichen felt that the strengthening strategies provided by the 3 veteran players were very down-to-earth and reasonable. Not to mention, the practical operation was also very reliable. Continue playing cards. Lewis brought the topic back and saw that he was about to win. Why say so much nonsense? The next day, they were arranged to patrol the location. Zheng Yichen also saw other hunters, some of whom were like Lewis and the others, appearing very natural and accustomed, while others were curious babies. Looking left and right, they should be newcomers like him. He is still with Lewis, and the security personnel at the Research Institute have not been surprised by any additional allocation in this regard. It all depends on their own choices. We are currently under full surveillance by some surveillance cameras, Lewis said to Zheng Yichen as he walked on the road with his weapon in his arms. This place is said to be a patrol area, but in reality, it is similar to a testing site. Generally speaking, the first 2 days are safe, but some research institutes may also carry out operations that cause accidents on the first day. Not only can we test those abnormal experimental subjects here, but we can also test the security mechanism by the way. As an experienced person, Lewis seemed not to mind teaching his experience in this area. This kind of thing can be summarized by oneself after experiencing it a few more times. Now, talking to Zhang Yichen about these things can also sell some favor. As for borrowing a gun, it's impossible. None of the three people who sleep together dare to lend that thing to someone who hasn't used firearms much. If they can't hit the enemy, it will actually trap their own people. Moreover, Zhang Yichen himself has a certain degree of combat power. Yesterday, while playing cards together and introducing each other, they also showed each other a hand. Zhang Yichen demonstrated his best way, precise stabbing. Within the attack range, they basically hit wherever they go, and their attack speed is also good. Using long-handled weapons gives them an advantage, and their patrol areas are not very spacious. The presence of Zhang Yichen is actually good. The vast majority of abnormal creatures have conventional deadly points. As long as they can break through defenses and hit deadly points, there is no difference between those killed with guns and those killed with cold weapons. Of course, the safest way is to distance yourself and use a gun to kill those abnormal entities. Hey, in addition to these, some research institutes will also distribute some unique weapons from their side. After Lewis finished speaking, Jamie smiled and said of his own experience. If you encounter that situation, you need to be more careful. The additional weapons issued by the Research Institute mean that the escaping experimental subjects are more dangerous and require some special weapons to be killed. I have had the privilege of participating in 2 such commissions. Although it was a bit dangerous, I have to say that the weapons developed in the Research Institute are really powerful. In the chat, they passed by an experimental site and faintly heard a piercing roar. Unfortunately, the experimental site was sealed, and the windows were also opaque, so there was no useful information to be seen. Lewis nodded thoughtfully and said, "It seems that we are dealing with a relatively large abnormal experimental body this time. Can this be considered as information deliberately leaked to us by the Research Institute?" Zhang Yichen learned again, can it still be like this? Of course, we are hired security personnel, actually testing personnel. If it is a sudden test without any signs, it will be mentioned in the agreement. Jamie smiled and said, with a daily salary of 2,000, which is considered a more conventional type of task. He has experienced being twice as tall, but that's even more dangerous. What we need from the Research Institute is some non-organized combat capabilities for testing, not to take our lives. Generally, we don't do such terrible operations. Most of the time, we don't have to deal with more than 3 critical incidents, but even so, we have to wait until the time specified in the agreement is over. During this time, we can't just be idle and still need to patrol some areas. Jamie let out a soft click and the chat ended. In the surveillance room, a researcher watched the surveillance footage and didn't pay attention to the casual conversations that hunters had while patrolling. It was now the warm up stage. These hunters will not lose anything as long as they play their role when they should, and the experimental subjects developed need to be tested in real combat. Before conducting practical testing, there will be some other tests that the Research Institute has been commissioned to conduct. Usually, it is to test the tools provided by those people, such as devices to drive out abnormal creatures, devices to control abnormal creatures, and devices to resist attacks from abnormal creatures, etc. The main projects of each research institute are different, and this kind of cooperation is still very frequent. The Nifida Institute mainly focuses on studying abnormal organisms, and there are also technical research for abnormal organisms, but they all focus on gene targeting and drug targeting. Not that kind of weapon or other technological equipment. The abnormal creatures that need to be tested first and then tested in real combat will be released after obtaining sufficient data to engage in actual combat with hunters. After collecting the data they want, the feedback of abnormal creatures in combat testing against machines and humans is different. His body temperature is a bit abnormal, so pay more attention when conducting practical tests in the future, said the researcher as he looked at Zhang Yichen in the monitoring. The monitoring equipment they introduced here not only has normal monitoring, but also some additional detection functions. This is naturally to better collect some data and other information. If he gets injured in the battle, remember to recover his blood in a timely manner. After that, the researcher left the surveillance room, coming here just to see the surveillance scans of this group of hunters. From the data captured by the monitoring, it appears that they are sufficient to deal with the experimental subjects they will deal with in the future. However, there are additional surprises in this information. It remains to be determined later whether Zheng Yichen is a person with abnormal physical conditions. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Newcomers should learn more. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Newcomers should learn more. Hey, actually every time I accept such a commission, I think the process at the research institute is too complicated. On the night in the dormitory, Jamie smiled and said to his roommates, "Today has passed smoothly. Although there are still 2 weeks left, overall it's not much." "That's right, just give us the reward and we can participate in the test." "We can get the money on the same day," agreed the veteran like Lewis. It seems that the process these research institutes have created is also like taking off their pants and farting. "Do you think those researchers are stupid?" Lewis said with a relaxed expression as he nibbled on the jerky. "These researchers do this, of course, for some other reason." "Guess what? Isn't it unfair for people to guess?" Jamie raised his eyebrows lightly. The reason is related to the characteristics of the Obuchi castle. Fortunately, you are still a local." Lewis smiled twice and said the reason he knew. "We all know that foggy weather in Misty City is more prone to anomalies, and those anomalies are difficult to completely isolate. Some research institutes have encountered situations where experimental subjects undergo additional changes due to the influence of foggy weather." "Shit, isn't that even more dangerous?" Jamie's tongue twitched as he had never encountered such a situation before and knew nothing about it. Zheng Yichen still listened to this information as attentively as Mengxin. "Indeed, but for the research institute, more testing information can also be obtained. However, at that time, it wasn't us wild testers who came on stage, and the institute's security forces would also be deployed." Lewis's expression was somewhat melancholic. "I have encountered this kind of thing twice in total, and there will be more rewards after solving it, but every time there will be colleagues' deaths." Jamie chuckled a bit and said, "Twice. Even this time, I have participated in 22 research institute security commissions and have never encountered one. Your luck is really good." At this moment, Zheng Yichen said, "There was a strong fog weather a few days ago, and there shouldn't be heavy fog in the near future." Lewis nodded slightly and said, "I hope so. There's nothing to say about the terrible weather in the hazy city. In terms of climate, it's similar to the outer city, but the fog is really unique. The Meteorological Bureau can release relatively accurate predictions of heavy fog, but it is clearly not the Bureau that determines when heavy fog will appear. There may not be heavy fog in the near future, but it is not impossible for strong fog to occur continuously." On the third day, Zheng Yichen, who had just woken up, looked at his phone and checked the weather forecast. "Heavy fog is coming." "Ah." Jamie heard Zheng Yichen's words, rubbed his eyes, and after his gaze became clear, he murmured twice. He exercised a lot every day, but when compared to Zheng Yichen's figure, he still seemed somewhat inadequate. Of course, from a muscular perspective, the strongest opponent is still Lewis, who is 1.9 meters tall and has a large skeleton, which is an innate advantage. Not to mention those innate advantages, but in terms of physique, their temporary dormitory can be said to be full of yang energy. Let's deal with heavy fog. There's fog everywhere in Misty City, so it doesn't necessarily affect this place. Jamie slowly put on his clothes and said, "I've encountered heavy fog weather in other research institutes before, and I haven't encountered any abnormal situations. Compared to these, I would prefer to quickly get in touch with those experimental subjects." He didn't come to this research institute this time to make money, his main purpose was to join the institute. He has already felt his limits and it is difficult to continue improving. As for some special reinforcement methods, those methods are very expensive. So the best way is, as mentioned earlier, to join certain research institutes, and the Nifida Institute is one of his chosen goals. This institute mainly conducts biological research and has many achievements in human enhancement technology. I performed better in this commission, starting with applying to join the security forces here. Although I can't freely choose to commission and make money as usual afterwards, I can come into contact with more possibilities here. It's not possible here. He has other options. There are quite a few opportunities, and many security forces and research institutes will recruit some hunters. Could you please give me more opportunities to show off then? I don't have a problem, Lewis said straightforwardly. The research institute manages meals, but adding extra meals requires extra money. Jamie will directly take on the extra meals. Lewis understood Jamie's idea, but he was not interested in joining the research institute. On the premise that there was no conflict, he was willing to let Jamie show off well, so that he could save some ammunition consumption on his end. As a newcomer, I need to learn more, Zheng Yichen continued. He had just joined this circle and many things were unclear, let alone Jamie's pursuit. Moreover, he himself has a special anomaly, having read a lot of related information online. There are quite a few people in this world with abnormal physical conditions. They don't encounter such evil organizations, and the likelihood of being sliced is really not high. There are also some people with abnormal physical conditions who want to lie flat and sell blood. He has even seen pictures of such people specifically posting their payslips. I don't know if it's a joke or really. However, even so, he still has a respectful attitude towards places like research institutes, especially after learning that the Nifida Institute is studying biology. He has no ideas about this area. Even if he has ideas, he will only have them when he knows enough about this area in the future. His current idea is to become a thug first, and when the battle really starts, he can take advantage of the opportunity to take away some of the experimental subjects, not too much, just a little bit. His current positioning is a melee unit, and after the melee with the experimental subjects, it is not normal to get some blood. In the patrol area, Zheng Yichen glanced at the surveillance camera and noticed that the frequency of the unnamed wild beast's roar that came out here yesterday had increased. Through the roar, some experienced hunters were able to determine the overall size of the experimental body. The body size of those experimental subjects should not be lower than that of the male lion. Lewis also said that when facing the experimental subjects here, it is necessary to be prepared for direct combat with bears. This commission is not suitable for close combat units like Zheng Yichen. Close combat is too easy to be missed. Unless Zheng Yichen can kill himself in one blow while ensuring that the place where he died can instantly paralyze those experimental subjects, with the vitality of large experimental subjects, even if he is hit in the key, there will be a short counterattack time. Using a gun is different. You can kill it with damage from afar, and you don't have to worry about being attacked by the experimental subject on the brink of death. Another thing is that the roaring sounds emitted by the experimental subjects make seasoned hunters quite curious, but the glass at those experimental sites is opaque, and at most, it is difficult to listen to the sound, making it difficult to obtain specific intelligence. The Research Institute needs to collect combat data. Can give some reminders, but obviously won't expose too much information to hunters in advance. Pay attention, there may be an accident today, Lewis whispered to Zheng Yichen and the others. There will be heavy fog in a while, and in the Research Institute's view, heavy fog is an additional variable. Is this not illegal? Zheng Yichen murmured. The weather wasn't changed by the Research Institute, Lewis shrugged and didn't say much about it. Jamie nodded knowingly and said, no wonder when I was at another research institute, I always encountered accidents in foggy weather. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. One Bear Eats More. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. One Bear Eats More. The accident came quickly. As he passed by the inspection site on a daily basis, the glass in the nearby passage suddenly trembled. Zheng Yichen's eyes twitched and he had already squeezed his fishing rod tightly in his hand. This thing can be used as a fishing rod in daily life, as a swing stick in battle, and when necessary, it can be directly wrapped in a layer of abnormality, which is the black spear that was previously used in the dense fog illusion. It is a derivative of its own abnormality. The thing he was able to produce was still inspired when he struggled with a few mutated small animals. It gave Zheng Yichen a strange feeling, not so much as a weapon, but rather a mouthpiece derived from his own abnormality. Used for eating. Prepare for battle. Louis shouted, quickly retreating while his weapon aimed at the glass in front of him. The damaged glass was completely shattered in the next impact. An experimental body with mechanical equipment hanging on it ran out, not a humanoid experimental body. Conducting such experiments is generally illegal and difficult to apply for, so most of the experiments are animals that have already mutated due to abnormalities. The one running out in front of me is a black bear. The black bear has some exoskeletons on its body, and in some places, it exposes bright red muscles. The top of its head is partially covered with metal, which has undergone some modification. The areas covered with metal have red eyes, which at first glance look like a beast-like Terminator. Zheng Yichen immediately left far away. He used to kill chickens and mice, at most bullying cats and dogs extra. Now, a bear with a shoulder height of nearly 2 meters has appeared. Jamie, it's time for you to perform. Jamie looked at the roaring black bear in the distance and swallowed. I think we should fight side by side. In the area where the giant bear broke through, some damaged devices can still be seen, and it is difficult to determine what those devices were used for before. The damage was too thorough. The giant bear was panting heavily and in an unusually irritable state, clearly indicating that the warm-up had ended in a state of intense heat. It urgently needed several living people to vent its anger. Hurry up. Louis threw out a smoke bomb directly. The places where they were patrolling were different. Since the experimental subject had lost control and was still a tough guy, he quickly gathered with other hunters and was considering how to get rid of it. Bad luck. Jamie and another hunter are also very straightforward. Currently, they have no intention of engaging in direct combat. It's okay to see abnormal creatures like lions and tigers, but now this bear is not easy to solve. Moreover, there are some modified parts and mutated exoskeletons on this thing. Its large body means it has thick blood, which is a type of experimental body that most low-level hunters do not want to encounter. In addition, there are also some insect-like abnormal creatures, some of which are equally troublesome. Most animals, due to abnormal mutations, are strengthened in their bodies, which may add some extra parts to make them more vicious, but most of them are mainly melee-oriented. Insects and the like are different. There are many things that can mutate and carry out chemical attacks, spraying acid, poison gas, venom, and so on, which is very disgusting. In the smoke, the roar of the giant bear echoed through the entire testing site, and other hunters were also startled. Zheng Yichen turned around to take a look at the state of the giant bear. The bear, who was affected by the smoke, was stimulated by the smell of the smoke and snorted, looking even more angry. He runs so fast. Jamie looked at the giant bear rushing towards him like a tank, running and counterattacking. He used 2 large caliber pistols, and although Jamie's height was slightly lower than Zheng Yichen's, his body was actually strong. It is not difficult to control such weapons. To deal with low-level abnormal creatures, as long as the caliber of the weapon is large enough and it can be hit accurately, the battle can be ended quickly. His attacks are effective, with each shot leaving a bloody trail on the giant bear's body. However, the bear's muscle strength is high, and its body is also protected by exoskeletons, which are effective but cannot immediately capture the bear. Louis and another hunter chose to kick, and if given the opportunity, they would also kick, but the giant bear's head was covered with metal, and the bullet hit only a shallow dent. They cursed directly and don't bring mutated creatures bulletproof helmets. There's something wrong with this thing. Even if it's covered in the head and hit by a gun, it should still have a concussion. Lewis quickly said, changing the ammunition for the weapon. Even if it doesn't work, kicking is still useful. After the giant bear's limbs were severely injured, its speed slowed down. Maybe the new bulletproof materials provided by other research institutes, damn it, make it more difficult for us. Jamie breathed a sigh. He had already heard footsteps in the distance, and looked at the slowing giant bear with a slight movement in his expression. Newcomer, I'll create an opportunity for you later and we'll take him together. Don't take too much risk, there are plenty of opportunities. Jamie's words made Lewis furrow his brow slightly. His performance was not limited to output, but if he excelled in cooperation with his teammates, it would also be an excellent performance. But Jamie's behavior clearly meant taking a risk. Of course, hurry up, it won't be too late later. Okay. Zheng Yichen shook off his fishing rod and saw the skeptical expression of others. He took an extended fishing rod and poked it on the ground, leaving several small pits on the floor. No problem. Seeing this, Jamie stopped saying anything. The strength of the fishing rod was already sufficient, and he even thought about preparing a weapon with such a strong disguise in the future. No one cares too much about holding a fishing rod when going out, right? It is reasonable to appear in the market with this thing. Jamie took the lead and quickly charged towards the giant bear. Zheng Yichen let out a light breath and followed suit. Lewis directly raised his gun and began covering with another hunter. They didn't shoot frequently, just to contain the giant bear. As he approached the giant bear, he became even more furious and slapped Jamie. Jamie, who was already prepared, quickly retreated, with a corner of his eye turning to Zheng Yichen's figure. He then focused on dealing with the greatly affected giant bear's mobility. He seemed that Zheng Yichen was a good newcomer and deserved his physique. Without hesitation, he followed suit and said, find a chance to poke him in the eye, and immediately retreat after hitting him. Jamie loudly reminded that this was not a battle with people. The bear had no culture and could not understand their communication. His current roar was not only a message to Zheng Yichen, but also a straightforward provocation on the giant bear's side. Zheng Yichen did not reply and stared intently at the giant bear. The bear had an implanted iron shell on its head, which had excellent buffering performance, and its eyes were not a big target. Coupled with its irritable movements, it was very difficult to hit. While Jamie was wrestling with the giant bear, there were subtle changes inside the fishing rod in Zheng Yichen's hand. The strength of this fishing rod is not low, and it was customized by him at some cost, but the true strength lies in the mouthpiece derived from the abnormality on his body. Derived from the inside of the fishing rod, with the obstruction of the fishing rod, even with monitoring, it is difficult to detect any abnormalities. At the moment when the giant bear turned its head, the black fishing rod poked like a venomous snake into the eye socket of the same Terminator. The red glow instantly burst, and blood sprayed out. The fishing rod that pierced the eye socket did not come out from the back of the bear's head, but rather pierced a hard object without piercing. The raging roar of the giant bear was ringing, and Zheng Yichen's expression suddenly became tense. He retreated at the fastest speed possible. The vitality of this thing was too strong, and this kind of injury did not immediately die. Originally, Jamie was supposed to cover up Zheng Yichen. With Zheng Yichen's successful attack, the giant bear's hatred directly fell on Zheng Yichen. Jamie took the opportunity to jump onto the bear's back, with one hand gripping the blind eye socket of the bear, and the other hand shooting continuously at the junction of the metal shell on the bear's head. After breaking the connection point, he roared and lifted the metal shell off the giant bear's head. The giant bear's massive body ran 2 steps later and fell heavily to the ground. Jamie jumped off the body of the giant bear, threw the metal shell in his hand onto the ground, and let out a long breath. During the brief entanglement, his protective suit was already torn and tattered. The giant bear's claws were sharp and powerful, and with just a wipe, his protective suit was easily torn apart. If hit head-on, you will either be dead or disabled, and if hit again, you will never make a third sound. This group of hunters is surprisingly excellent, said a researcher in the surveillance room, looking at the end of the battle with a somewhat regretful expression. They released the experimental subjects in advance and even opened the barrier between the testing area and the external environment, but the giant bear still did not show any secondary abnormal changes in the foggy weather. It's better to follow the original plan and wait for further testing and improvement of the giant bear before releasing it. We have collected enough data now. The protective effect of the metal shell on the giant bear's head exceeded expectations, and the body's resistance to bullets was also very good. Can it continue to fight for a period of time even if the brain is directly damaged? If it weren't for Jamie's ability to fight, he would have directly dismantled the giant bear's modified skull. Those hunters who rushed over would also need to intervene in the battle to quickly solve this test experiment. Alright, recover the experimental body and proceed to the next stage of research. The body of the giant bear cannot be wasted. After recycling, it can still be used. Based on the existing collected data, this group of hunters can wait for a week to deal with the upgraded experimental subjects. At the testing location, the hunters who gathered looked at the body of the giant bear and chatted loudly. Some of them arrived here in time, but the reason they didn't immediately take action was that someone and the experimental subjects chose to engage in close combat, suppressing firepower and killing teammates. The best way for people to take responsibility for their actions is to wait for the results of close combat hunters, either to be killed by the bear or to be killed by the bear. It doesn't affect them if the hunter kills the bear. They come here to get a fixed income. There is no difference between a group of people solving the experimental body and one person solving the experimental body. There are too many types of hunters who accept commissions, and occasionally some big shots want to experience it. It's normal to accept some ordinary commissions. When encountering such a situation, just lie down and win. Although it's not like encountering a big shot now, it's actually quite good to have colleagues who can work so hard to solve the goal. Of course, it's impossible to put it off, as research institutes have relevant records. If you really deliberately put it on the wrong side, then you'll just be on the blacklist. It's still like that, the money in the research institute is really not easy to get. Quickly, people from the research institute came here to collect the experimental subjects, and the site was also cleaned clean, as if there had been no combat except for some signs of damage. In the temporary dormitory, Jamie was wearing a bandage, eating meat and drinking beer, and there were some medicine bottles next to him. Haha, this time you hit really well. Zheng Yichen looked at Jamie like this and smiled. His mood was also great. Although he couldn't suck blood by stabbing the experimental subject, he also took the opportunity to extract a part of the blood belonging to that subject. At first, he was worried that the experimental experience would not affect his ability to perform, but after trying it out, he was completely relieved. The experimental body is also an abnormal organism, and ordinary organisms cannot be the experimental body. Even after modification, it will not affect the essence of that existence. The extracted blood from the experimental body was transmitted to himself through his own abnormal mouthpiece, and others could not see any changes in him. Zheng Yichen was very clear about his own state. Completely eliminating the wilt disease caused by his own abnormalities is not feasible, but this time it has also improved his physical condition. So much so that now Zheng Yichen's blood is boiling, he wants to find a place to masturbate. Louis picked up a piece of meat and started eating it. The cafeteria was able to serve normal meals, but the 4 people present were all very fond of meat. Half of the time has passed, don't be too careless. Those research institutes won't be at a loss. Jamie nodded. Indeed, the bear had been recycled, and it was uncertain whether this research institute would produce any new abnormal biological experimental subjects. It would likely be even more difficult to deal with that thing by then. If things don't go too far, it's usually enough to do it again. If the research institute goes too far, hunters will also resist. The rest of the week was too idle. After daily patrol, I returned to my dormitory to sweat and exercise, and communicated with my roommates about muscle strength. On the third day to the end of the commission, while patrolling, the hunters encountered another accident at the testing site. The process was the process. Anyway, this time he saw a more thoroughly transformed giant bear wreaking havoc, fiercely confronting those riot prevention facilities. After exploding all those things, they were able to pass through layers of protection and escape smoothly, which included tempered glass and some special synthetic material. The destructive attack of the giant bear is equivalent to a violent test of those protections. One bear ate to the extreme. I think we should gather with others, Lewis, who was experienced enough, suggested very seriously as he watched the giant bear's condition. The last time that bear was mainly biological, they took some risks and this temporary team could solve it. This time, half of this guy's body has been replaced by mechanical ones. Who knows how this research institute revived this bear? End of this chapter.